Can anger and frustration somehow lead us to deep spiritual joy and peace? This is the life lesson we'll learn from the 23rd star of Vedic Astrology, Pūrva Bhādrapadā, before the Sacrificial Altar. In this series, Life Lessons of the Vedic Nakshatra, we'll discover how life really works by exploring the 27 constellations through the mystical Sanskrit words of the Vedic Nakshatra Sutra. Thank you for joining me for the 23rd installment of Life Lessons from the Vedic Nakshatras, where we are studying Taittiriya Brahmana, an ancient Vedic book, and what Taittiriya Brahmana has to say about the symbolic nature of each nakshatra. And we derive a really meaningful, deep lesson about life from each one of these sutras or short codes about each nakshatra. So this week we're going to look at Pūrva Bhādrapadā, the nakshatra named before the sacrificial altar. And the subject is going to be if dissatisfaction and frustration and anger and those kind of negative feelings can somehow lead to these positive things like placidity, tranquility, peace. So let's begin studying this nakshatra by listening to the actual Sanskrit of the sutra itself as it was originally written. So what this is saying is this: the divine serpent of manifest reality at the front of the altar's base needs the universal divine fire to dissuade all of material existence. Even in English, this is a really long translation. The Sanskrit words are really long. Let's pull them apart briefly, look at each particular word and what it teaches us individually, and then put it all together and get to the life lesson itself. Okay? So let's start with the first word in here, which is Ajasya Ekapada. You may know, if you're familiar with the nakshatras, that the deva or the deity of Pūrva Bhādrapada is Ajaikapada. And that's what this word is. Ajasya Ekapada. Ajasya Ekapada. So what does Aja mean? Ja means to create something. Aja means not created. So it's something that exists but is not created, is Aja. This means that it refers to something which is not conventional, it's not material, it's not an object in the external world. It's the subject which generates the external world of objects. That's what Aja is. It's an eternal. That means eternal, something that eternally exists. It's not created. It eternally exists. And in Vedic thought, that thing, which is Aja, is Brahman. Brahman means consciousness. The ability to perceive things is Aja. And Brahman is Daiva. Brahman is divine. So Aja means the unborn thing, the eternal thing. Brahman, consciousness, the divine thing. Ekapada. Let's look at this word now. Ekapada. Eka means one. Pada basically means foot. So 1 foot. Ekapad. In Sanskrit, you use the term 1 foot to refer to snakes. The one-footed are the snakes. So Ajasya Ekapad means the divine snake, the divine serpent. So that's why the translations, it starts off with saying the divine serpent. But then I say the divine serpent of manifest reality. So what's that all about? So here's the other thing. The word pada, it doesn't just mean foot, but it also means the number 4. Because most creatures and things have 4 feet, like tables, right? So because most things with feet have 4 feet, Sanskrit-speaking people have used the word pada to refer to the number 4. And then if you say ekapad, you're saying 1/4. Now, Ajasya Ekapad means 1/4 of Brahman, 1/4 of divinity, 1/4 of this divine non-created substance. So that might seem elusive, but if you study Vedic thought, any Purana, you very quickly get introduced to the concept of they divide reality into a 1/4 section and a 3/4 section. They say that the external world of objects which you perceive with your outward going consciousness is only 1/4 of the true reality that exists. That the internal realm of perception is 3/4 of the reality. So the term 1/4 of Brahman, or 1/4 of divinity, it means the external world, the material world. Okay, so that's why I say the divine serpent of manifest reality, because that's what Ajayakapat means altogether. It means the serpent who represents the manifested material, tangible world. And that's what this nakshatra is going to have a lot of focus on. Okay. Another thing that you should know about Ajayakapat is that Ajayakapat is an avatar of Rudra. Rudra is the angry one, the destroyer. So this nakshatra is also going to have some sense of anger to it. And that anger is going to have some connection to the material world. So hold on to that thought. As we go through the rest of the words, it'll become more clear what this is all about. The next word to look at is the way the nakshatra is named in the sutra. It's called Pūrva Bhādrapada. Bhadrapada is an older name for Bhadrapada. And you can just interpret them both to mean the same thing. Bhadrapada means the things that stick out, the feet-like things that stick out. So it refers to the legs of a table or an altar, especially an altar. In fact, the nakshatra itself, the stars, the primary stars of the nakshatra, there's 2 in each one, Pūrva and Rudra, Bhadrapada, and they form a rectangular squarish shape exactly like a table. So it looks like a table or an altar in the sky, and it's got those 4 dots where the 4 legs are, the 4 stars are there. Okay. So Bhadrapada means the legs of an altar. An altar is a place where you will perform a sacrifice. And it's Pūrva. Pūrva means in the front. Now, think about this. So we're talking about manifest reality, the material world. And we have Rudra's attitude towards it, which is some kind of anger or frustration or dissatisfaction, a desire to destroy. And then the next word is that there's a sacrificial altar. But we're talking about something which is in front of the sacrificial altar. What do you put in front of a sacrificial altar? You pile up the ingredients for the sacrifice. This nakshatra is actually really fascinating, and one of the classical symbols for it is a two-faced person, a person with heads pointing in opposite directions. And the reason for this is because it's simultaneously very materialistic and very spiritual. So this will get more clear as you see. It has to do with taking material things, collecting them, acquiring them, making a pile of them, but then sticking them on an altar to destroy them for some higher purpose. Then the next word we're going to talk about is the description of what this nakshatra needs or depends on. It's parastat. The parastat of Pūrva Bhādrapada, the thing that Pūrva Bhādrapada depends on, needs, is Vaishvanaram. And this is another really fascinating word. The root of this word is anara, which means for humans, for living things. And Vaishva is derived from the word Vishva, which means all. So the word Vaishvanaram means something which is held in common by all living things. So what is that? What is the thing that all living creatures, whether it's a tree or a human or Brahma, the creator of the universe, what do they all have in common? They have so many things different, but what do they have in common? It's Aja. So consciousness, or the Aja, is the thing which is Vaishvanaram, which is common or in unification of all the various creatures that live. Pūrva Bhādrapada needs this. It will search for it. It will hunger for it. It will try to find something deep in superficial things. Now, another way to translate the word Vaishvanaram is to change the R from Nara to a L. So it's Anala. And it's not strange. It's not too strange to change an R from an L. If you remember the sutra on Aslesha, didn't call Aslesha with an L, called it Ashresha with an R. It's because phonetically L and R's are close in your mouth, so it's easy to exchange them. So if you change it to Anala, you will understand why another definition given in dictionaries of Vaishvanala has to do with fire, because Anala is a fire, and Vaishvanala means a fire that will destroy everything. And that certainly is fitting with the motif or the theme that the sutra is presenting about Pūrva Bhādrapada. It says, we're going to ajasyaikapada, we're going to amass all of the 1/4 of reality, we're going to amass all of the objects in the world in front of Pūrva Bhādrapadā, in front of the sacrificial altar, and then we need Vaishvanara, an all-consuming fire, to burn them, to sacrifice them. Now, why do we need an all-consuming fire? Because we want to reveal something, the essence that's in them, the commonality, the true underlying nature of everything. And finally, let's look at the fourth important word in the sutra. This word is going to describe the avastat of Pūrva Bhādrapada. The avastat is the thing that it wants to produce, the sum that it wants to emit. So what does Pūrva Bhādrapada want to produce? It wants to produce something described as Vaishvavasavam, another really complicated long word. But the root of it is sava. So sava means to bring to life, to vivify. Then the prefix is added avasava. So ava means to come down, like avastat. It means the thing that it wants to put down from it, like drop out of it. The egg that wants to come out of it is the avastat. So avasava, what does that mean? Well, it can mean putting down sava. So sava means like the vigor, the vitality. And so putting down the vitality means quieting the enthusiasm. It seems that Pūrva Bhādrapada wants to sacrifice the material things so that it can quell or push down its enthusiasm for all those things. Vaishvavasavam, to push down all the enthusiasm in the world for it. However, the word really has dual meaning, because ava isn't always just pushing down, but it means like coming down. Like avatar, coming down from another place. That's what avatar literally means. So what it also means is that Pūrva Bhādrapada wants to emit some sava, some invigoration, some enthusiasm, some inspiration. Now, when a word has two meanings, both of the meanings coexist at the same time. So avasava means it wants to quiet down the enthusiasm for external material things so that it can inspire and evoke the enthusiasm for something deeper, something more universal, something more fundamental to truth. So I find this to be a really fascinating nakshatra. I mean, both of the Bhadrapadas are really fascinating. The spiritual potential of the Bhadrapadas is astronomical. These are very spiritual nakshatras. It doesn't always have to produce a spiritual result. It can also disassociate people from life in a negative way. You know, being spiritual might also mean having no inspiration in the regular world, or being disconnected from the regular world. But however they manifest, it's always very fascinating to me to read charts that have Pūrva Bhādrapada or Uttara Bhadrapada active. So to summarize what the sutra is saying about Pūrva Bhādrapada, it's saying that material things should be piled up before an altar of sacrifice. Burning these things by deep and thorough perception, that's Vaishvanara. We have to burn these things, and that is going to allow us to comprehend the true meaning and purpose of life. Now, that's what Vaishvavasava really means, to comprehend the purpose of life and to become invigorated by that. But it also means, the second meaning of Vaishvavasava is the second thing that happens. When you become aware and invigorated by the true purpose of meaning of life, you become disinterested in the differentiated, tangential material world. So this is why it's two faces. You get these two effects at the same time, where it's a disinterest and an interest. It's a disinspiration and an inspiration at the same time. It's the disinterest in one thing which allows the inspiration in the other thing. So now let's take it all the way to the end. We'll wrap up the video with this like main point, which is what's the life lesson. And as I began by saying, is there some way that frustration and anger can lead to spiritual bliss, to spiritual joy? So I'll read a little bit from the commentary that I've written in the translation of the sutra that I'll be publishing soon. All right. It says the sutra teaches us about the unexpected connection between frustrated anger and joyful peace. Now you may be thinking, where's he getting anger from? It's because, don't forget, a Jaikapat is Rudra. Rudra means howler, shouter, wailer. He's the angry god of destruction. And don't forget, we're talking about piling things up before a sacrificial altar and burning them. Okay? So this nakshatra has a lot to do with intense feelings, anger, frustration with life, driving you to seek something deeper in it. Now, what the sutra really is saying, first of all, is where does the anger come from? It's actually showing us. It's using the word ajasyaikapada, which directs our attention to the ekapat, the 1/4, the material world. And what it's saying is, this leads to Vaishvanara, or this needs Vaishvanara. It needs destruction, it needs fire, it leads to anger, it leads to wailing. So what the sutra is trying to teach you is that if you direct your interest only to the 1/4 of reality, the minority portion of reality, you will be frustrated. Direct your attention and efforts towards the main portion of reality. Then you'll become happy. Don't direct it only to the outer external portion of reality. If we direct our attention and focus to the ekapat, the material world, inevitably we will wind up frustrated and angry because we cannot control the outer world. But that very anger, this sutra is teaching us, is that very anger acts like a fire that arises, the frustration that arises from expecting material life to be satisfying and fulfilling and it never working. That frustration and anger becomes the very fire which we will use for our sacred Vedic sacrifice. So that very anger will become the fire that will burn the material things. A Jaikapat is a dragon. He's a great divine serpent and he breathes fire. The role of a Jaikapat is to destroy the universe by burning it. So if you can see that the fire is coming from the dragon's mouth, then you'll get a clue about how not to get burned. What does that mean, symbolically speaking? Your anger and frustration is the fire that burns. The dragon is a jasyaikapat, material things, the 1/4 of reality. If you can see that this fire of anger and frustration comes from the mouth of material things, your need and desire and dependency on external conditions is what causes you to be angry and frustrated. If you can see that, then you're going to say, I want to burn that dragon instead of get burned by it. So then you will get inspired to burn those things, and then that will vaishvavasava, extinguish your inspiration for them. And then the other meaning of Vaishvavasava, it will inspire you to find deeper meaning. And that, finding the inner essence of the things that we interacted with, that inner essence is what actually contains the joy, the peace, the happiness, the pleasure. The pleasure is not in the outer form. The outer form is just a tangible interface to the inner form which contains the pleasure and the bliss. So if you can not be dependent upon the outer forms, but directly access the inner forms of reality, then you have no barrier to being pleased, joyful, happy, peaceful all the time. So this is how anger can lead to joy, when it inspires you to destroy the right things. And the sutra also brings out one other interesting point, which is very, very related, which I've kind of already hinted at, but I want to make it explicit before I end the video. If you think about the fact that it's ajasya ekapat, So the Ekaput is a product of the Aja. So think about that carefully. That means that Brahman, or the inner thing, the fundamental thing, the consciousness, is what produces the forms. So for example, you see a beautiful woman, you see a handsome man, you see a nice car, you see a delicious lollipop. Though you're looking at the Ekaputs, you're looking at the 1/4 of the truth of that thing. It's actually the Aja which is producing that fourth that you can interact with. But where is the actual joy and happiness and interesting stuff? Is it in the representation of it in the 1/4, in the tangible way? Or is it really 3/4, 3 times as much at least, in the inner form? So if you start to realize this, that's when you get avasava. That's when you cease getting so inspired by making a lot of money, or having a big swimming pool, or whatever, driving a Ferrari. So it starts to give you the idea that I can be happy by contacting the Aja. So when we get these kind of realizations and thoughts, we cease seeking tangible things in their own context, as if they were isolated things. And we begin seeking the manifesting conscious entity at the root of them all.
Don't miss the life lessons from the other 26 star clusters of Vedic astrology. Subscribe to my channel now. And keep your ears up for announcements about the release of this book and the next online classes about it. Thanks.